Welcome, everybody. This is Microsoft 365 Community Development Call on August 19th, 2021. And we do have a really great agenda again today. There's a lot of things to actually quickly go through when we start, and then 3 different call demos in the pipeline. So we're going to do a quick recap, of course, on the latest development, any news and all of that stuff, and then latest on PnP Framework and PnP core extensions, PnP PowerShell. Not that much new actually is happening there because people have been on summer vacation, or the community leads on those. yoteams, Victor is here to talk about latest on that one, and then Microsoft Craft topic, I can say Beth in the call as well. Then we'll quickly recap on the latest on the Microsoft Teams samples and latest on the Power Platform samples, which are available for you to take advantage as well. So we do have a cool stuff there available. We'll do the picture time with a together mode, and then we have 3 demos, like I said. So Daniel Laskovich, Chris Kent, and Thomas Gilles today are presenting. So looking forward on that. I'm trying to be as fast as possible in the intro, so you will have sufficient amount of time for those demos. So quickly recapping again, just a reminder for everybody, we would love to have you present on this course. So if you're interested in presenting, reach out to any of the PnP leads or PnP people who've been active in here, like David, me, Hugo, and so on, and we'll get you scheduled on the upcoming call. Whatever you're demonstrating doesn't have to be open source solution. It can be a learning which you learn from your customer projects, but we do not want to have a product sales pitches in these calls. So that's kind of the thing. We don't want to have people selling their products, but if you want to tell a story related on what you learned as part of a building something, that's completely fine. Again, small perspective difference there. And obviously contribute in GitHub and provide feedback is the most important thing. And now we do have a lot of assets available. A lot of different channels and YouTube channels we have 2 of them. We have a lot of open source assets, sample galleries. And then if you're wondering what is the URL, there's too many URLs. I can't handle this, and AKMS M365 PnP is the one location where you can find all of the assets and things which are available for you to take advantage. Now, we've gone through every single week showing the latest on the community call setup. So starting from 31st of August, we are combining Microsoft Craft, Microsoft Teams, and SharePoint community calls. And it seems to be that Office Add-ins community call is getting merged on this one as well. So we're doing a small adjustment here because we want to talk about Microsoft 365 platform more holistically. So rather than introducing you our internal organization structure, which is Graph is different than the Teams and then SharePoint and Office. We want to talk about the holistic platform, what you can do in a Microsoft 365. And that's why we're doing this change. So starting on 31st of August, we'll introduce a weekly Microsoft 365 engineering call. All of the links and access for those are again on the AKMS M365 PnP URL already. So you can download the recurrent invite. It starts from 31st of August. We've been seeing people already popping on that call within the past weeks as well. So patience, we'll get there for sure. Now, I think, Paul, actually, you are on the call, and I guess it's better that you'll do a quick update on the following slides, a quick update on the script samples.
Yeah, that's right. So,
yep, you were ready to go. Cool. That's what I thought.
So yeah, PnP's script samples is a site for sharing your scripts when you automate tasks in 365. So for example, CLI for 365, PnP PowerShell, SPA management tools, and other related Microsoft 365 scripts, which is super cool. We've had 4 new samples since the last community call. So thank you very much for those that have contributed to the initiative so far. Absolutely awesome stuff. I mentioned previously that we've added a couple of new features, so copy to clipboard, so you can quickly grab those scripts and then paste them into your favorite authoring tool, and commandlet help as well. If you're not familiar with a certain commandlet within the script itself, there is a clickable link that will take you to the supporting documentation site regarding that specific tool. If you'd like to contribute to the project, we've got some guidance on the site, or feel free to reach out on Twitter or the issues list, or ping me on chat. I'd be happy to help. So back to you, Vesa.
Excellent, thanks. And that was Paul Pollack from CBS. So you'll find him in the social media definitely as well. Now, let's move on. Thank you, Paul, on that one. So let's jump then on David. You'll probably do a quick intros on the sharing is caring and where we are with this one.
Yeah, thank you, Vesa. For friends, it's important to know that we are an open source and inclusive community. That means using all of our resources as well as contributing back. But we know that there's some hurdles and things like understanding the labyrinth of GitHub. Perhaps you would like to present, like Vesa had mentioned earlier, but you're a little nervous about it. Maybe it's your first time. Sharing is Caring is a collection of sessions that will provide you hands-on, safe space opportunities to ask questions. We will walk you through together how to accomplish a number of these things or provide feedback and information on how you could take advantage of all the tools that are available, as well as contribute back. Ask Me Anything sessions have been scheduled, as you can see a number of them for September on the Recognition Program, which we'll talk about in a moment, script samples, which Paul just covered for us, and a Power Platform. And we've got lots more sessions coming up for the end of the year. So please don't hesitate to take advantage. Again, safe space opportunity, they're not recorded, and we welcome everyone to begin collaborating. Now, once you do and you start contributing, we'd love to celebrate the achievements and the work that you've done. So the PnP Recognition Program is a couple months old. We partnered with Credly, which is the same platform that handles the certification exams for Microsoft. So when you achieve the badges that are available to you within the PnP community, those are going to sit right next to your badges for your certifications, allowing you to show them off, share them in LinkedIn, share them on Twitter. Likely you've seen them recently, and we love to see them. So continue to share them. We're going to have more campaigns coming soon, special edition badges, Hacktoberfest badges for the specific sample repos, such as script samples, SPFX, Power Platform, etc. We do need you to opt in and register, though, aka at ms/m365pnp-recognition. So please don't hesitate to take advantage. We'll just tie that over to your email address so that we know when you make those contributions where to send the badges to. Again, thank you all for your amazing work, and we hope to see you opt in for the recognition program. That's back to you.
Excellent. Thank you, David. And we're seeing already a lot of people signing up on this one, which is really, really great, because we definitely want to celebrate the people who are contributing and helping others in the community. So thank you for that. Now, quick updates on the PnP.NET libraries. As the community leads and project leads has been on a summer vacation, there's not that much movement in here, just a updated statistics. So in July, we had 75,000 tenants using PnP.NET libraries, and this is the PnP framework, which is the newer version, and then the PnP core SDK, which is the same as the CSUM extension library a while back. PnP framework is using .NET Core and .NET 5, and can be used as a modern technology, and PnP core SDK is the more classic, if you're more familiar with that one. A lot of usage on both, because they're helping people to succeed in their day-to-day work. The community leads are coming back from the vacation after this week, so we will definitely see more development here at that point. On the PnP PowerShell, the same thing, a lot of usage. There was 23,500 tenants within July, which is a pretty decent number considering it's a holiday, vacation period in the most of the world. But there's no actual significant updates in here either, but we are expecting more updates on here within upcoming weeks and upcoming months for sure. Usage is good. There's a lot of contributions pending, and we absolutely welcome people to contribute on these both projects as well. Now, then let's jump into yoteams, and I saw Victor in the call. You have nice graphs, new graphics.
New graphs, cool. Yeah. I'm fiddling with Power BI. Yeah, so no big updates here. There's just a new preview of yoteams-deploy, fixing a bug there. The most interesting thing is probably that the usage has actually stayed up during the summer, which I think is really cool. Typically we see a dip, but people are actually making teams up during the summer. So that's perfect. Thanks.
And that's it. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and I can just, I'm watching the chart. You still have the August in this chart, right? So that's the dip on
August
the end.
Is the last one. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I thought. So, so that gives a wrong impression. No, it's really, really cool. We're seeing actually the same for a lot of the development areas. So SharePoint framework, exactly the same. There was no dip, which is strange because we can see dip on the usage in the worldwide usage, but no dip on the development, which is really, really cool. So
perhaps people are developing during the vacations.
Exactly. Why wouldn't you? This is really cool. As long as, family first always, but then hobbies after that. So you know how it is. Cool. And then let's jump in the Microsoft Graph Toolkit. And Beth, you are on the call as well.
Thank you. So the MGT team is trying to finalize our 2.3 release. Our team realized that we are divided into the names that we're supposed to give to a new MGT provider. We used to call MGT teams SSO provider. So we need your help choosing one of the names. Go to aka.ms/mgt poll. Tell us which one makes more sense, or if there's more or other ideas that you would like to name this provider, let us know. What we're working on is majorly preparing for the 2.3 release and also doing some fundamental changes in aligning our Toolkit components to Fluent UI web components. So not a lot of new features introduced, but we are working very hard through the summer to get this done. Some new updates all coming from our community. So thanks everybody who are involved in helping us, and we really need your help during this period because we have a very small team. So if you would like to see new features and bug fixes, try to go to our repo and then see the issues that are tagged with help wanted and good first issues. And also give us feedback. We're planning for building 2 new components after these architectural changes. One is the search component. The other one is a generic picker that you can add your own entities into this component. So then go to the PR and the issue at the bottom of the list and then give us feedback. We need community discussion to make decisions and see what people like them. And try all the next packages. And that's about it. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Beth, on that one. I have to comment quickly on the Fluid, the no significant movement, but then this aligning all Toolkit components and Fluid UI web components. This is a really fundamental piece because, again, it gives clarity for the developers on where we're heading. So, of course, we all want to use the Fluid UI, and getting everything aligned on that track is super, super important. So that reduces then confusion. And even though it's not necessarily a significant change, visually, it's a huge change behind the scenes. So really, really good direction.
Exactly.
Awesome job.
Thank you.
Cool. And then, Bob, I'm going to put you on the spot, if possible, related on the Microsoft Teams samples. Anything new here?
Yeah, for sure. Well, we don't have any new samples because I think a lot of people are on vacation right now. And so I assume they're all sitting on the beach, like coding their samples right now. But something a little bit different we're trying. So Teams Engineering has approached the PnP team asking for help. They love the samples that everyone has created, and so they're asking for more. Perhaps you're looking for an idea of what kind of sample would be interesting. So what they've done is they've put these into the issues list of the PnP samples, Teams samples repo. I made a shortcut to that at aka.ms/Teams sample wishlist. If you go into these, check them out, what you'll find is that each one has an end user scenario and a developer scenario with some details on implementation and also references to the documentation for the features. Some of them seem a little simpler, but they all are using different and new technologies. And so as part of this, I'm gonna call him out by name. Wajid Shakil has actually agreed to provide from his team support for you. If you get stuck, it will be right through that same GitHub issues list, which is just beautiful because then everyone can actually benefit from seeing that interaction and learning more about some of these new features like universal action models, meeting apps, etc. So excited to try this, and actually working with David and the recognition folks to get anyone who, as you complete these, as these appear in the sample gallery, we are going to have a very special kind of Credly badge for people who do who help out with this initiative. So really looking forward to see how this works, and please go check out aka.ms/Teams sample wishlist to get ideas for your next sample. So that's it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Bob, on that one. And just to reiterate on that one, it's a classic request from a lot of the community members that, hey, I would like to create a sample, but I don't know what kind of sample and what would be the idea, what would the sample actually do? So this is the answer for that. So there are suggestions and scenarios. Now, if you have time and you're willing to help, here's suggestions. And of course, other samples are also welcome. It's not like we are limited on this, so not at all. So absolutely other things are suitable as well. Now, on the Power Platform sample site, April is out this week. And quickly recap on my side, we do have AKMS Power Platform -samples available, where we have Power Apps templates, components, connectors, custom functions, Power App Flow templates, Power BI, Power Virtual Agents. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible also to find Power Platform samples using a really powerful filtering mechanism and a nice polished UI. And this is for you to contribute as well, and basically getting involved on contributing and helping others to understand the power of the Power Platform. Power of the Power Platform. Well, it's super powerful, as we see pretty soon from the demo from Daniel as well. Now, before we go to the demo section, let's do a quick group photo. I will start the recording and I will move the video feed in here. Here we go, and I will put you there so you can actually see what we're recording. Let's see how many people. I think we'll max out to 50 again today. So let's wait a few more seconds, or 20 seconds, or 30 seconds. I can see a lot of familiar faces. Maybe I'll put my video on as well. And let's see how this goes. Are we filling it? Well, filling up, filling up, filling up, filling up. And still expanding. The limit is 50. We'll get the room. And Chris, behave on the back row. Don't stop throwing those things. It's not nice. I think we're maxed out. I think let's do some hand waving, everybody. So thanks everybody. Thanks everybody for joining. Thank you, Todd. Thanks everybody. So let's move into the demo. So really, really good. Hopefully by end of this year, we will actually finally meet face to face. That would be pretty awesome. It's been a while. I'm not going to stop presenting. I will move in here and I will point it here, and then we move in to the demo section. We're not too far from the schedule. So Daniel will start with the building of first Power Platform community connectors. Then we'll move to Chris on the list formatting magic. I have no idea what he's going to do. Probably something related on horses. And again, if you've never seen Chris did demo, that sounds super weird, most likely. And then Thomas is going to do the last demo after that. But Daniel, I think you are good to go.
Okay, good. So thanks for having me. I'm going to share my screen. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm going to talk about building your first Power Platform community connector. A couple of weeks back, Natalie from Microsoft did a demo on the Independent Publisher Connector Program. If you haven't seen that, it's on YouTube, so you can always go back to YouTube and view that. She will give a whole overview around the program, so that's really good. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Daniel Laskowitz. I am the Power Platform lead at Society in the Netherlands, and I'm also a project coordinator, group member for the Independent Publisher Connector Program. The Independent Publisher Connector Program is something that's really cool because before it was only possible for people who owned APIs to also submit their connectors to the Power Platform. And that means that, for instance, somebody from Spotify, a developer there, could create the connector for Spotify and submit that to the Power Platform connectors. But now it's also possible as an independent publisher, so somebody who doesn't work at Spotify, for instance, to create a connector and submit that to the Power Platform. So that's really, really, really interesting. It opens up tons of possibilities. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about how to start creating your own community connector. And it actually all starts with the GitHub repository. So if you go to github.com/Microsoft/Power Platform Connectors, you will end up at the Power Platform Connectors repository on GitHub. And there are a bunch of directories in there. There's the certified connectors directory, the custom connectors directory, and the independent publisher connectors repository, or sorry, the directory. The certified connectors, that's always handy to see and look at because it helps you a lot with how they created their own connectors. So you can kind of look at them and then create your own one. The custom connector ones are a bit different because those are just connectors that you need to deploy yourself. The certified connectors and the independent publisher connectors get deployed automatically to the Power Platform environment. So whenever you have submitted your own independent publisher connector and it gets accepted to this repository, then it will automatically appear everywhere in the Power Platform. And that's really cool. So if you open up that directory, you can see all the connectors in here that are currently in the product. So you can see Airtable is in there, Jira is in there, Etsy, and all kinds of other connectors. If you have no clue where to start, you can always look at the top connector asks that are at the bottom of the page, and you can pick one of those connectors to start building. So that's about it for the independent publisher connector GitHub. When you start creating one, you should go to the Power Automate website, log in, and go to Data and Custom Connectors. When you open up that page, you can see all the custom connectors that are in that environment. In this one, I have two. I have a random duck connector and a Spotify connector in here. If you create your first one, just click New Custom Connector, and then you can create from blank. That's what I always do. But you can also import an open API file, etc. That's also something you can do. Let me show one of my connectors here, the random duck connector. If you are creating your independent publisher connector, there are some properties that aren't that interesting. So, for instance, the icon and the background color are not interesting at all, because every independent publisher connector will always show the same connector and color. So those properties aren't interesting. The description is really interesting because, of course, that will end up in the docs pages, but also in the product. The host name and the base URL are, of course, really important. Let's move to the security part. In this case, this connector doesn't have any authentication, but you can change this to OAuth or other authentication types as well. In this case, it's just an anonymous API, and it doesn't have any authentication, so that's not enabled in here. If you move to the definition, this is actually the part what really matters, because this shows all the actions, triggers, etc. you have within your connector. So whenever you start creating a connector, you can start with an action. You can just hit the new action button, and you can start working from there. You can add a summary, a description, an operation ID in there. You can import a sample request. And if you do that, it makes it a lot easier, because if I go back to the other action I have, I also use the import from sample option here. And when you do that, you get a nice screen here. You can select the verb that you want to use in this sample. You can add the URL, some headers, and the body, and it will automatically show those in this request in here. And then you can just edit the properties that you have in here. And that makes it really easy to use. The same goes for the response, because a response is really important in a Power Platform connector. Because when you use that Power Platform connector, you always want to see the response values, for instance, in the dynamic content property pane in Power Automate, for instance, because you want to easily pick whatever properties come back. And that's something that you really want to configure. So whenever you hit the response here, you can also import from sample, and then you can use a sample for what would come back from that call. Let me delete this one. When you do this for the first time, you have a button here instead of update connector, and that's going to be create connector. If you click that, it will create a connector, and then you will be able to test your connector. There's also a code part, by the way. I'm not going to zoom in on that, but it's a new feature and it's really cool. But you can use that as well. But in this demo, I'm not going to show that. When you select the test part, you need to create a connection. I already did that, so my connection is already available here. But normally, when you don't have that, you can just click New Connection, and then it will create a connection for you. Here is the test operation. I have only one operation here. When I select test operation, it will run the operation, and it will give me back the response that I have. And when I would, for instance, open up a new tab here, I can see that I get a random duck. So this is actually working pretty good. if you are creating your first connector, it's really good to start in the UI because it will fill in all kinds of properties. But after you're done in the UI, you want to download your connector. And downloading, you can do that by using the PaCon CLI, which is the Power Platform Connector CLI. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But whenever you do that, you will get a directory. And it will look something like this. So this is the directory of the random duck connector, and it has a couple of files in there, amongst others, the API definition. And this is the API definition, and it's the Swagger file or the Open API file, which contains all the properties that I just added in the random duck connector. When you download this connector, you still need to change a lot of things because if you look at this, it only has a title, description, and if you want to submit your connector, you also need other info. And I have my Spotify connector here, and that shows that, for instance, the contact also needs to be in there. So if I want to make my random duck connector good to go for the independent publisher connector program, I need to add this as well to my connector here. And there's a bunch of other properties as well. So you can see here is the XMS connector metadata object in there. And you also want to have that in there as well. Because this would help in the connector gallery in the Power Platform. So these properties are really nice to use. Some other things I wanted to show you is the response schema, for instance. This is the response schema we have. There is a description and it just says URL, and the description here that says message. It really helps if you are changing this around. Because let me go back to my browser. There are some best practices on descriptions, for instance. So if you look here at this website, there is all kinds of properties in there. For instance, description, and it gives you a recommended use for description, and it also shows you where it will show up. So if you have a response schema description field, that will show up in here actually. When you are in the Power Automate Designer, it shows the description in here. So it's really useful to actually add a good description in there. So that's something that you really need to know. There's a bunch of other things in here as well. So for instance, a summary is a really good one to have because that will show up in the header of your trigger or action block. So you really need to specify that as well. And it also shows how, what type of casing is handy to do here. So that's also something that you really need to be aware of. One other thing I wanted to highlight is the dynamic values part. Dynamic values are really awesome in custom connectors, because if you already know the SharePoint connector, there are tons of SharePoint triggers and actions, and they all have the site and the list parameters in the actions. And those are actually dynamic values, because on the site parameter, for instance, it gets a list of sites. And whenever you select a site, you can select your list and you get all the list inside of that site. And those are the dynamic value parts. And there's a really awesome blog post by Paul Schäflein about that. And I really encourage you to look at that when you are creating your first connector, because it shows you really, really nicely how to handle that. And for some other part, I also wanted to show you the Power Platform Connector CLI. The Power Platform Connector CLI helps you a lot with, for instance, downloading your connector. You can create your connector through the CLI. You can update it through the CLI. You can validate it through the CLI. So whenever you want to use the Power Platform Connector CLI, install Python beforehand, and then use this command to install the PaCon CLI. And let me move back to my presentation for that, because there are some interesting commands that you can use. Of course, you need to log in first to the PACon CLI. It will just guide you through the login there, and then you can create, update, or download your connector and also validate it. And what's really cool about the validation is, of course, that it will grab some errors and warnings before you submit it to the Power Platform community connectors. So yeah, that's some tips I wanted to give you as well. So are there any questions for me?
Given the timelines, Daniel, let's actually do the questions in a chat, because otherwise we'll run out of the time. We need to stop on the hour anyway, so it's easier that way. So thank you for that. Thank you, Daniel. Really awesome stuff. And please get involved. It's a great new opportunity for people to contribute as well. Now, Chris, let's move Chris on your side.
All right. Woo! Let's do it. Okay, so we're going to talk about some list formatted stuff. I'm Chris. Let's do it. Bam. All right, we'll head over to our classic Warrior Horses site. And, you know, the Warrior Horses are locked in battle all day long, constantly planning strategies and so on. But they're also concerned about the inner lives of their horses and their, you know, so they've got a collection of diaries here that they put together. The horses store in SharePoint, because that's where you want to put your diaries. That makes total sense. But we're going to use this as an example to look at a couple of things that maybe are easier in other quote-unquote languages, but sometimes can be a bit challenging here in list format. I'm going to give you a couple of tips on how to do that, and we're going to go as quick as we can. All right. So the idea here, I've got this beautiful document library, right? And I've created a custom tiles view. You know, it's very beautiful. It shows the thumbnail, and one of the things I'm trying to show is the file size, right? So how do we get that, and how do we look at that in different ways? So there's several things involved there. And the first thing we want to look at is how we deal with precision in numbers. So to do that, we're just going to take a look at this random some number column here, which you can see just has some numbers in it. And we're going to go column settings. We're going to format this column. And all we're going to do here is we're just going to go to advanced mode so we can see what's going on here. And we're just going to make this, let's say, a div. Make it a little div here. Oops. And we're going to say our text content, right? Let's just show the current field. So at current field, and that's how we just get that value of that number. If we preview, wow, it looks exactly the same, right? Well, what if we wanted to do some math on that? All right, so now we're doing an expression. We say equals, and we're going to just divide it by 3. And in this case, we start to see, right, we get some pretty ugly numbers. Now, the ones that divide fine, that looks great. You know, and we've got one that is one decimal spot, and some that are a lot. Also, I am in the United States, so we use the period for the decimal. And what I'm going to show you capitalizes on that, but you can certainly swap out what I'm doing with a comma if you're, you know, almost anywhere else in the world. Okay, so if we take a look at what can we do here? How can we start working with something like this? So the first thing we need to do is find a way to do precision. Now, there's no, you know, toString here where we specify, you know, the number of decimal digits we want or anything like that. Not when we're doing math. So first thing we want to do is find out, do we need to do anything? So we can inspect this to see if there's a period in there, right? So in order to do that, we're just going to put an if. We're going to say if that current field, you know, has a period. So to do that, we're going to use this index of operator. Index operator. Now it needs a string, so that's the number value. So we're going to use a toString operator on that. So now we're going to wrap this. So we're going to convert this. String just means text, right? So I'm going to put toString on there. I'm going to say, look inside there and tell me, is there a period? Now we know it won't have a period if it equals -1, because it's going to give us the position of the period. So we're going to say if it equals -1, right? Well, then just put out our value. So we're going to say current field divided by 3. Now we have to do the math again because there are no local variables here, which is, you know, sad sometimes. It makes our expressions a lot more complicated, but it does work. In other words, we're just going to put a question mark, right? So if we preview that, hey, now we're detecting when we need to do something, right? So when there's a period, we're going to do something different. Otherwise, we're just going to show it. Now, in this one, our goal is to have it with 2 precisions, right? So to the hundredths, right? So we want, you know, .00 or dot, you know, whatever afterwards. Now, that's pretty easy in this case, right? Because we know it doesn't have any. We can just say plus and put a little string, you know, blah, 00, right? And hey, look at this. Hey, there we go. We fixed that one number. So as long as all of your numbers evenly divide, you're all good to go with this. But if you live in the real world, we got to do a little more. All right, so what can we do with that secondary part? What we've got is a question mark right now. Well, now we can start to use things because we've already looked at it as a string. We can do some of our string operators. All right, so again, that just means text. In this case, we're going to use a substring. And so we're going to grab a substring of that value. So again, we have to convert it to a string to look inside it, or to get the value, right? So we're going to say at current field divided by 3 to string. And we want to say inside that text, we want to start, at the beginning, so 0, and we want to go, to some value. In this case, we want to go just past that period. So we're going to say index of, actually, I have to take our whole index of from before, because this is telling us where that period is. Grab that guy, and we're going to put that right in here instead. Ooh. Paste that in there. And then we're going to say +3, of course, because we want to have the period and 2 digits after it. So if we preview that, there we go. Now we've got 2, digits of precision, and that's great. But what about this guy, right? This 12.5 is messing our stuff up, right? Now there are a couple of cool operators. There's a pad end and a pad start, which could help us with that. And you might think, I'm just going to slap this on here. Right? I'm going to do a pad end. And the idea of a pad end is you give it a string, which is this one. And we're going to say we want a total number of digits. We'll say 10. And we want to throw 0 on the end. All right, there we go. We'll preview that. We have a disaster. And that is, we don't actually know how many digits there are before the period. And although we have a length operator, that length operator is for arrays and doesn't really work on text. So what can we do here? Are we out of luck? No, or I wouldn't be showing it, right? We're going to move our pad end. So let's get rid of the pad end. And what we can do is we can take advantage of the fact that substring does not care if you go outside the what is it called, the bounds, right, of the string. So in other words, even if our string is 2 characters long and we specify we want 0 to 100, it doesn't care. So what we can do is right here with our toString, we can actually pad it here. So we can pad the end here, right there, and we could say, in this case, we'll go just like 100, we don't care. 100, and then throw 100 zeros on the end of that string no matter what. We're still using the index of on the original calculation. And we do that, bam, we have our 2-digit precision. So that is a lot of little operators and nested if statements to make that work. But we've got it. So that's very, very exciting. So now how do we use that for, say, our file size? All right, so let's save that just so we've got it. So our file size on the document library is in the additional columns. We have this file size column, we can apply that. And now we see that in this case, it actually is showing the value, right? Bytes, megabytes, kilobytes, it'll go up to gigabytes, right? And then for folders, it actually shows the number of items in there. So that's interesting. So can we access that value ourselves? Well, let's just use the same sum number column again. We're just going to look directly at that file size. In this case, we're just going to say file size. And we access this with a wonderful name of file_x0020_size. Very catchy. All right, so we got that. Woo! What the heck is that? Right, so now we got some weird value. What that is the number of bytes, right? So it's not giving us this fancy value. If we try to put a display value like we can with other things, it's still going to be the same thing. All right, and it's not showing anything for folders. We don't get this fancy one item or so on. So what can we do with this? How can we work with this value? Well, good news, we're going to do a lot of what we just did, but we're going to add a bunch of operators and some other things there to kind of calculate those out. And so the way we do that is first we want to check, is there anything there? So we're going to say equals, and we're going to say if file size, right? And we're going to say if it's nothing, well, then just output, nothing, right? We don't care. Otherwise, then put it out, right? And so then we'll put out that file size again. So I'll underscore x0020_size, right? So that's going to kind of accomplish the same thing. But the reason we're doing this is to protect our operations here a little bit. But what if we wanted that kind of item count right there, like they've got? So the good news is that's a different column. So if we go to that show hide columns, there is an item child count column. So we can apply that and we can see the values there. We can use those too. So we can come in here and say, instead of this, we could say, let's show the item child count, right? It doesn't have any extra things in it. So there we go. So now we say if there's no size, we'll show that, right? We can get a little bit fancy and we could say, I'm just going to cut and paste this one for time, right? But if I've got an item title count, and I could say inspect that to give myself some fancy stuff. So say that plus, if it's greater than 1, items, otherwise just say item. And I'll give it an extra parenthesis there. Let's see. Yeah, so now we got 1 item. That's pretty cool, but we still aren't really working with our file size the way we want to. So the first thing we might do with our file size, is take a look at it, right? So we want to know, hey, if this file size, if that file size is greater than, say, 1024, or it's less than 1024, then we want to show it in bytes, which it already is in, right? So we're going to say then just show the file size, file underscore x underscore size, and we're going to say plus bytes. Very exciting. Otherwise, we're going to say question mark, just so we can see what it is, right? If we preview that, something kind of weird there happened, right? I mean, it worked, but then we've got these, and that's interesting. Now, one of the things to note is that file size is actually coming back as a number. I mean, not as a number, it's coming back as a string, which is very strange. So a lot of times we have to convert it to a number when we want to do any kind of math on it. So let's jump ahead a little bit, right? So that works just fine if we're doing, say, the bytes, right? But if we wanted to do, say, kilobytes now, well, then that gets a little more complicated. So let's check the next one. So now we're going to say if, and we're just going to put it in a number so we can operate on it, operate. You know what, let's not have me read that out repeatedly. All right, copy that, paste that in. If this thing, right, is less than, and we're going to use the POW function, right? So this is going to raise it to the power of 2, right? So we're going to raise it to the power of 2. We're going to say if it's less than that, right, then we want to put it out in kilobytes. So this is going to be KB. Otherwise, we're going to say question mark again, right? And we're going to put our extra things. We're going to have to do is we're going to have to start inspecting that. Now, this gets a little crazy, so I'm just going to copy and paste this huge formula because we're going to use everything we just used in that sum number column earlier, except we're doing all these raised to the power of and all this other fun stuff. So let's just copy and paste that, and we'll kind of go through it. Ooh, that looks real pretty. All right, but if we preview that, oh, that's fancy. So it's got it out to precision. It's got the kilobytes, it's got the megabytes and the bytes. And if we had something large enough at the diary, they really keep writing, we'll have it in gigabytes too. Right, and then if we want to throw back in our item count, we can do all that too. So that's interesting, right? And if you take a look at this, this is a sample available to you, and you can check it out afterwards to really kind of dive into this fun thing. But what's really happening is the nested if statements. And what we're doing is we're converting that string value that comes back to a number. We're comparing it first to see if it fits within bytes, and then using it there. If it doesn't, we move on to kilobytes and so on. And we raise it to power to see if it falls into those categories, and then we do the math to divide those out, and then we're doing that same kind of substring and toString with the index of to get all of our precision on there as well, so that we don't end up with crazy numbers. So then we can just take this very exciting formula we just did, and I'm just going to move over to our tiles view. Ooh, let's go to tiles, where we've got that size placeholder, and I'm going to format that view, and all I'm going to do is go down here where that is. And I'm going to say instead of size, let's copy that same formula we just did, and we'll preview it. And there it is. So, woo! Now you can work with file size and item child count and so on. And all that works pretty nicely. Also, one thing to note here is that this thumbnail, if you ever haven't seen this, you just say at thumbnail large. Wow, that couldn't be easier, right? And that'll just be the source for the image for the file. So check that out. All right, so very, very quickly, we'll do a quick wrap up. And that's that there are a series of operators you can use for precision, right? If you want to just skip all of this kind of string and text manipulation here, you can just round them up or round them down, right? With the ceiling and the floor, and just cut them off and don't care about those anymore. And then if you're working with the file size, remember that it is in bytes and the value is text, and it's going to be empty for things like folders, but also things that might surprise you, things like a OneNote file, for instance, oftentimes doesn't have file size. And so on. So you're going to want to check for those conditions before you start doing operations on it to avoid failures. And then, of course, item child count is available to you as well. And both of these don't necessarily have to be in the view because it's a document library. They're going to come back and you can just use them. So there you go. Here's some resources. Check out the documentation. We got over 100+ samples on all sorts of things, from this to views to forms to columns to every column type and so on. And of course, we have all of these videos we do every couple of weeks, and you can check all those out on the playlist available on our YouTube channel here. And that's it for me.
Cool. Thank you, Chris. And then let's jump on Thomas's table so we don't run out of time today.
Perfect. Okay. getting started with Microsoft Teams Toolkit and Blazor. Let's make that quick through PowerPoint. I'm Thomas Göllers. I'm head of modern workplace solutions at the company at Solvion in Graz. And as you see, I'm way too lazy to update my slides every time. That's why my colleague is also there. Just for the people watching on YouTube, if you want to reach me, there's my contact detail. Other than that, let's jump right into the topic. This slide actually comes from Microsoft Teams team and shows you the capabilities in terms of platform and the options you have to extend, enrich, enhance the experiences of your end users. And those come in many flavors. As the old saying says, many roads, if not all roads, lead to Rome. Today, we're going to focus on how to use web technologies to create a tab inside of Teams, and we're going to use Blazor. As you see, a lot of options. I don't want to get into a discussion what is better because, as always, it depends. So short consultant joke also from my side. Resources, everything you see will be based on those links. I will post those links now in the chat, and then we can go right into Visual Studio. If you want to follow along and download the stuff next to your call, no problem with that. Where are we? Here we go. And so you have everything. Let's open up Visual Studio. Okay, you're going on that screen. Nope, you're going here. I create a new project, and I will select Microsoft Teams app here. And let me move that. Let me move that window back over here. Yep. And I will create a new Microsoft Teams application. I will call that PnP demo. What number did I not use yet? Let's say 15. Nope. Backup is the one that is already working. 15. And create the solution. I'm using here an extension that you can download in one of the links from Microsoft, the Microsoft Teams Toolkit. Don't be confused. There are two versions of the toolkit. There's one for Microsoft Visual Studio and one for Visual Studio Code. The one for Visual Studio Code focuses on developing with React and TypeScript, and the one for Visual Studio focuses on Blazor. And both are referenced by the users specifically as Microsoft Teams Toolkit. That's a little bit confusing, but you need to make a precise decision between the Visual Studio version or the Visual Studio Code version. How to install the toolkit inside of Visual Studio? Pretty easy. Manage extensions, and then you can just search for it. I have it already installed. Here you see it. It's in preview. That's very important. It's not G8. It has some rough edges still, but it's already leading into a very good direction from my point of view. But again, we will come to this in a few minutes. Some rough edges, and maybe if you're not 100% sure what happens behind the scene, I wouldn't suggest to use it in production. And of course, that's also what the team from Microsoft is saying. Don't use it in production until it's G8. The capabilities we get with that is that we can say here, project, Teams FX, and configure for SSO. I click here, praying to the demo gods, and down there you see registered application under my development tenant with this client ID, identifier, tab endpoint. Everything looks good. And now just press F5. I might need to log into the tenant again because I opened a new instance of Visual Studio. Let's see if the cookie worked. Nope. Need to copy some details. That's the fun if you realize that you can't use your normal developer tenant because it has already stuff we are not allowed to show yet. So I need to use my other tenant, and I realized that 15 minutes ago or something like that. So apologies for the short delay while I'm using my authenticator to get a one-time password, because also my developer tenant uses multi-factor, so always secure. Yep, okay. And with that, we are opening up, or the toolkit actually opens up Teams. Let's see if this authentication thing, and see the three dots down there a little bit, is it still working? Let's just wait for a couple of seconds before I try it again. Because this is one of the quirks in the first time in a new solution, it sometimes isn't really working. Come on. Yep, now it's opening up. It will open up with an installation dialog. PnP Demo 15 was the name of the solution provided. I click on Add. And here we are in a couple of seconds with our running code inside of Teams. So what happened in the background is that the Teams toolkit actually created a Teams manifest and uploaded the manifest definition to my developer tenant. How did it know about the connection and how does it know about what tenant to use? Actually, it's based on the accounts that you provided with Visual Studio. And for the moment being, the first time you install the toolkit, it will open up the normal Microsoft 365 authentication dialog. You will enter your credentials and those credentials stick. The only way to change those credentials at the moment is to uninstall the toolkit and reinstall it again. So that was what I needed to do to change between my two tenants for a couple of minutes ago. What we have here now is a Blazor instance. I can click on Authorize. We'll see the code in a couple of seconds. I need to consent to my new created Azure Active Directory application because I created a real new application and it also created an AAD application with the right permissions to use. I will consent on behalf of the organization just to make it easy for us now. And you see, it gets my picture, it gets my information. That's all running by just clicking F5 and jumping through 3 or 4 loops of authentication. The code actually, the structure is a regular Blazor project with some special things towards Teams. If we have a look at the page, we will have as an index page, it's the index razor, but our tab actually is the tab razor. It's referenced over there by /tab. And what you see here is actually the page from the demo. Congratulations, my name. And here is the magic of Blazor. It's C# inside of HTML. Blazor, the word Blazor comes from browser and Razor, Razor being the HTML view generating engine from the .NET team, and browser because Blazor comes in 2 different ways. It comes in the way of WebAssembly. That's the one that's generating all the buzz around, and that's why it's called browser or Blazor, because WebAssembly basically runs only in your browser. There's no server side needed. The Teams toolkit works with the server-side implementation for security reasons, because if you have a client secret and the client ID, you should store it on a server and not in a WebAssembly, because a WebAssembly, in the end of the day, is a dynamic link library that is streamed down to the client. And we all know that there are people out there that can't wait for inspecting your solutions for credentials. So don't do that. Use those approaches on the server side. What we get from the toolkit is this pretty cool sample already. I get my username, and down there, direct in the Razor page, C# code, and then instantiating a Teams FX. That's actually the magic with the toolkit, that they create helper classes that allow us to use JavaScript SDK from Teams within our Blazor Teams solution without actually us needing to fill around with the JavaScript parts. What we get is an example of how to start the toolkit with initializing it, and then you get a graph client by just saying Teams FX, get graph service client, and then you can start implementing stuff. Let's try one more thing, and let's try to add a small count of my very own amount of teams that I'm a member of. I will just open up my backup plan to just make that quickly. We will add a representation in the HTML part to add over here an amount of members of the team. We need an actual counter. Yeah, here. And then you're just going down here and call the graph in a different way. Out of the time, I will just start by making here a breakpoint, stop again, and start the toolkit again, or the application based on the toolkit. It will load up, and the breakpoint will only hit when I press the button, actually. It again wants you to install your tab. And if I click on authorize now, you will see we hit the breakpoint. And that's really, really cool. Developing local on your client machine, hitting a breakpoint here. And if I go now through, you will see, okay, it will get the photo stream, my profile, and only 2 minutes left, but this actually won't work. We'll get an error here. You see here, exception thrown, Microsoft Graph Service exception, because what happened? Okay, exception isn't outputted, but what really happened is that our application was configured to use a certain scope to talk to the graph. And what I did here was, okay, I wanted to get a list of all my teams. And this scope wasn't present to the Active Directory application. So what I need to do is I need to open my list of applications in my Azure Active Directory, go to app registrations. You see here my backup plans and the demo 15. And here with API permissions, I need to add a permission. Microsoft Graph delegated permissions is enough because we don't want to read the details of the team. We just want the number. Team read basic, add permission. Okay, granted. Go back to Visual Studio. Let's see, 15. Stop again. Press play. Again, it takes some time still to do the whole cycle. So they're working on making this F5 experience faster, because if you start developing with it, you will get, okay, this takes 15 to 20 seconds and it starts getting boring pretty quickly. But let's see, authorize. Let's jump through. There we are. My account is member of 6 teams. So in 12 minutes, this was the Microsoft Teams Toolkit. You can start by, we're working with Blazor, F5 experience, you get a graph client, and happy developing against Microsoft 365 Graph.
Awesome. Thank you, Thomas. Really great and exactly on the hour. So I'm going to go just show 2 slides just to recap on where the recording is happening. So the recording will be available in our Microsoft 365 community YouTube channel at AKMS-M365PnP/videos. It will be there typically in 24 hours. Follow us on Twitter at the dev one and then the community one. Next M365 channel community call happens on 2nd of September. SharePoint Framework community call on August 26th. And then we have the new platform community call starting on 31st of August for a weekly Tuesday cycle. So that's happening starting from 31st. And that's the link on the top. You can download the recurrent invite already for that one. But thank you everybody for this and have a great rest of the week. And we'll get the recording out pretty soon. Thanks for the presenters. Thank you. Thank you. Let's stay in touch. Keep the feedback coming. Cheers. Bye-bye.